you are trying to shift your perspective on what reading should be, avoid burnout, find a new way to read, or maybe you just want to change things up a little bit and make reading about books and experiences that you will be thankful for at the end of the year, then here are some tips and some reading goals that are not about the numbers. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to talk to you about reading quality and quality reading goals or qualitative reading goals in today's video, because this is the time of the year when everybody is thinking about their goals for 2025, right? And that includes reading goals. And I see so many videos up on the internet circulating about these 2025 reading goals that are at least about the numbers, and there is nothing wrong with that. Like, you guys know that I read a lot of books. Usually I read more than 100 books a year, and I have a reason for that, but it's a topic and a discussion for a whole other video. So, you know, the numbers are definitely part of my life, but I don't really make my reading goals anymore solely about the numbers. I have been thinking about quality reading goals for a while now, for more than a year now, and this is not the first time that I come here and talk to you guys about qualitative reading goals. And a couple of days ago, I actually grabbed my notebook and a pen. I sat down and I decided to make a list of 12 quality reading goals that I think you should try for to have the best reading experience and the best reading year of your life. I included some examples, recommendations, and personal anecdotes. And now, without any further ado, let's just get to these 12 quality reading goals without any particular order. Goal number 1, read less internet hyped books. And I know that this is probably something that sounds a little bit hypocritical because I am the part of it. I am a bookish creator up on the internet talking about books. And I do feel that the bookish community on whatever platform is and can be a beautiful place as long as you are smart about certain recommendations that you receive, because you really have to know what it is that works for you. It was specifically the romantasy genre that made me think about this reading goal, because I love romantasy. You guys know I love romantasy. When it comes to romance, I always go for fantasy romance or historical romance, right? But last year, I had such a bad experience with romantasy. I bought so many books that people hyped up, and I just kept DNFing them left and right, and it just left such a sour taste in my mouth. Now I am very careful with books that are popularized, especially when they are so hyped up before their release date. And that is a big thing for me, because you guys know that I love reading new releases, and there are so many videos up on my channel that are about anticipating new releases for a season or for the upcoming year, right? And sometimes, you know, it's also my fault because I am hyping myself up for that book. So now, instead of just pre-ordering a bunch of books, I take my time and I make sure that I do my research and I have a genuine interest in the plot, in the characters, in the book itself. And maybe I even take my time and I wait for a couple of initial reviews to come out before I decide to invest into that book financially, or just to even invest my time into that particular book. I suggest that instead of solely relying on the internet when it comes to your book recommendations, walk into a bookstore. Walk into a bookstore and just browse. That is, for example, how I found A Dreadful Splendor by B.R. Myers a couple of years ago. It was kind of like a cover buy for me. I knew nothing about that book before picking it up, and oh my god, that book was so good. It was such a nice reading experience, but nobody influenced me to buy that book. Or try to talk to the booksellers, try to talk to other book shoppers in that bookstore. You will be surprised to see that these people We are all connected there. We all love books and we all love reading. We all want to talk about the books that we love and the books that we want to recommend to other people. Goal number 2. Get out of your comfort zone. And this is the goal where I can share so many personal examples with you guys. But before I do that, I just want you to ask yourself these 4 questions. What, when, where, how? First, let's talk about what. What are the genres that you don't read? That you don't read at all, that you don't want to pick up at all, maybe because you have some kind of prejudice against that genre. This is how my romantasy reading journey and this is how my historical romance reading journey began, and I uploaded so many videos on my channel owning up to this mistake because I had a certain level of prejudice when it comes to romantasy and especially when it comes to historical romance, and people in my life had to push me to read these genres, and now I am freaking obsessed when it comes to romance. I only want to read romantasy and historical romance. I am currently going through my historical romance era, and it hits me every single time when I think about it how much I lost by not reading this genre, by not picking up these books, by completely dismissing this genre in the past. Also, have you ever tried a silent book? My all-time favorite book, and I've read like 500 books easily. My all-time favorite book is a silent book, The Wanderer by Peter von den Ende. And when I bought this book, when I picked up this book, I finished it in 30 minutes and it changed my life. And that was not my expectations when it came to this book. And here I am talking about it as my number 1 favorite. And this is the book that I recommend to everybody in my personal life, in my professional life, in my online life, all the time. Next is to challenge yourself when to read. Try to find a different time during the day or even throughout the week that is the best for your focus. For example, for a long time, I struggled with reading nonfiction and poetry specifically. And then I realized that in the morning, when I am so fresh, my brain is really, really fresh, that is the time to read these 2 specific genres. I like to sit down, put on a mask, get my tea ready, and just do nothing else for an hour, but read a nonfiction book or a poetry. And honestly, it helps me to set my head straight, and in general it gives me such a nice start, such a nice boost to my day. Next, challenge yourself where to read. And this is probably something that sounds so silly, but again, I can speak from personal experience. I am a very active reader, which basically means that I like to read and move around at the same time. When I go on a walk, when I go on a hike, when I clean the house, when I do the laundry, when I cook, when I bake, whatever, I always read at the same time. Sometimes it's physical books. I can walk with a physical book in my hand, but sometimes when I do laundry or when I clean, obviously it's an audiobook. And it's not enough that I can get a lot of reading done this way. I also realize that for whatever reason, my brain, while I am physically active, also processes that book that I am reading way more efficiently. Back in the days, because I'm also kind of like a couch potato, guys, I don't know what to say, I'm a Taurus. Once I am set on that couch, I am never getting back up again, okay? But I struggled with it in the past because I thought that I just want to sit down, make a hot chocolate, and then read a really good book, like all cozied up, and it never worked for me. I was bored out of my mind until I realized that, I'm actually a very active reader. Next, challenge yourself with how to read, and I have specifically 2 recommendations here for you guys. One, try to change up the type of books that you read. For example, if you are somebody who loves reading physical books, I understand, because for a very long time I was pro physical book. I only read physical books and I still love the feel of the physical book and I love to turn the pages. But again, I challenged myself and I want to challenge you to try audiobooks and to try electronic books. If you are a physical reader and you want to change that a little bit, I would actually suggest that you start with electronic books, because it's still like you are actively reading the words on that piece of equipment that you are using to read physically, and then you can progress to audiobooks. Trust me, it will change your life. There are so many audiobooks out there that are masterpieces because the narration is just top notch. And sometimes the voice actors, the narrators can really elevate the entire reading experience. Also, maybe it is time for you to challenge yourself and try to read multiple books at the same time. Now, maybe this is just the mood reader speaking here, but I realize that to me, the best way to avoid burnout and reading slumps is to read multiple genres at the same time. So when I get bored of one, I can just pick up another book, relax my brain a little bit, and then go back to the first book that I was reading. So when it comes to my reading productivity and why I can be such a productive reader, it is definitely because I am reading multiple genres at the same time and I just never get bored. The next reading goal is to read educational and inspirational books. For many people out there, books are entertainment. And for some people, like for example me, books are entertainment and also education. And I feel that because we all went through a standardized education system that, let's face it, left us with some room to improve, and the reading list, the required reading list that they gave us, it was not always fun. And again, I guess that we collectively agree that school in certain ways destroyed reading and learning for a lot of people. Challenge yourself and pick up a self-improvement book. Try to learn something new. Try to broaden your horizon about a certain topic that you, for whatever reason, are passionate about. I especially recommend this reading goal to people who struggle with nonfiction, because I know that there are so many people out there who think that nonfiction is boring, and it's definitely not for them. And so many people out there think that nonfiction books basically just remind them of school, and I get it, I totally understand, but probably the problem is that you are picking up boring nonfictions because you are not really interested in the topic that that book is discusses. You just picked it up because it's the newest hype. Next reading goal that I would like to suggest is to support foreign authors and read more translated fiction. And this is also something that I personally need to improve, because if you are a reader and if you are really into literature, that you probably understand that this is essential to ensure the biodiversity of literature. To read from foreign authors and to read translated fiction is still the best way to foster empathy, to develop an understanding, to try to understand people who are different from us, understand their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences, their culture, their history. This is the best way to do so. This is how I discovered Korean fiction and Korean literature, and it changed my mind. Some of my all-time favorite literary fiction books are from Korean authors. And the next reading goal or reading tip that I want to give you guys is actually a little bit, at least in part, is linked to this reading goal that we have just discussed, because I'd also like to encourage you to read books in different languages. If you are somebody who speaks more than one languages, then just try to pick up books in your second language. Or if you are somebody who's learning a second language. It doesn't matter, even if you are on a beginner level, try to pick up a book in that language. You don't have to pick up an adult fantasy book. I want you to succeed here, but pick up a children's book, middle grade books, young adult books, or anything that is very easy for you to understand and to read, and even audiobooks in this case. I think that they work very well. And I wanted to include this tip here because I remember the very first time when I was able to read a book in English, because English is my second language, right? And I struggled with it a lot. I still remember the years when I was just not able to pick up an English book. I mean, I was able to pick it up, but I couldn't read it because I didn't speak English that well. And I remember that feeling. And I also remember that it was in 2018 when I was able to finish an English book from cover to cover with the help of online dictionary. I admit that. But I remember the feeling. I felt so strong and so smart and so powerful that I read a book in a second language, a language that I was not born into. And the next reading goal is to support debut authors. And this is something that I also want to focus on in 2025 because I am not really happy with what I see currently when it comes to the publishing industry. Now, let me explain myself. We all have, especially if you read a lot of books, insane amount of books, we all have our favorite authors. We all have our auto-buy authors. I know that I have mine. And when I see a new release coming out, I automatically pre-order it. And sometimes I feel, this is not the case all the time, but sometimes I feel that these very successful, very well established authors can get away with a lot of things. Especially in 2024, I saw a lot of poor editing, a lot of poor plots and character development in certain books. Like when I objectively look at my 2024 reading, most of my anticipated releases from my favorite authors, they were flops. We all know that it is very hard to succeed in publishing and to get your books published, but there are so many literary talents out there, and there are so many stories out there that are worth telling and reading about. And I would really like to support these authors because they have to put so much work into publishing their books. Incredibly competitive business. I like to support them, and I think that in general readers should support them. The next reading goal is to read books by women, because women, female writers, are still historically underrepresented in literature. And to read books written by women is not only essential to bridge this gap, but also it is essential to understand the experiences of women. And I think, considering current political situations and considering everything that is going on in the world right now, this is more important than ever. And the next reading goal is to read books by minority authors. And for the purpose of this video, when I say minority authors, I refer to people who are non-Caucasian and or non-cisgendered. And I also want to specifically include immigrants in this reading goal. Just like women, these minority authors are, again, still historically underrepresented when it comes to literature. And I think that it is time in 2025 to start bridging this gap. The next goal is to buy and read used books. And I know that for so many people out there, it's like the situation, but for me, for example, again, I just need to speak from personal experiences. It was actually something that I really struggled with because I did not always like used books. Because I'm a book collector, I always strived to buy books new and then just to, keep them for the rest of my life. But then I realized that because I am a book collector and because books are so expensive, especially if we are talking about hardback new releases, I had to make a compromise financially, and I decided to start buying used books. And honestly, it just opened up new opportunities for me. Buying and reading used books will not only help you financially, it will also help the planet and the environment, right? But also, it is a treasure hunt because you don't know who owned that book before you. And I actually enjoy reading about margin notes. I enjoy finding the highlighted passages. I love the vintage covers. Like when you buy and read used books, this is the charm and this is the excitement of it. Next reading goal is to read books from your local library. And I'm not necessarily talking about physical books only, but also ebooks and audiobooks. For example, through specifically Libby. And this is not just the best way to support your local library, but also the best way to test out the books. Because books are financial commitments and time commitments, of course. And again, when you consider that a hardback new release can be $40, you don't necessarily want to DNF it and unhaul that book, right? You can just go to your local library, pick up a couple of books that you are interested in, take them home, read the first chapter or first couple of chapters, whatever, and then you can decide whether you want to purchase that book or not. The next reading goal is to read a book that challenges you. And I want you to ask this question. What is it that intimidates me when it comes to reading? Is it a Russian classic? Is it a non-fiction book? Is it a 1,000 pages long book? Is it a new genre? Is it a book in a different language? Is it a book with open endings that you absolutely hate? Just try to pick it up and try to read it. And if it doesn't work out for you, it's still okay. But if you end up liking that book and finishing that book, it's not only that you will feel amazing afterwards, these books, because you are not used to them, they will also make your brain function a little bit differently. And that's a good thing. And the last reading goal is to pay attention to representation, even when it comes to fictional characters. Try to pick up books that are different from your experience. Try to pick up books with characters who have different nationality than yours, who have a different body size than yours, who have a different mental well-being than yours, different sexuality than yours. We are all different, and diversity, at least in my humble opinion, is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing when it comes to humans, and it's something that we all should support. Now, you guys let me know what are your 2025 reading goals, and if you found any of these quality reading goals or suggestions / tips useful. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Check out a couple of my other videos that I will leave on the screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!